Evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 955. It's the weekly show all about weather. This is the pre-show, the magical, marvelous time where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say really outrageous things. So obviously, we're going to not have our Oklahoma correspondents on the show tonight because of the situation that is ongoing in in Oklahoma and Kansas. In fact, we'll check in on them in just a second. But let's bring in our guests, and we will discuss the ongoing situation. For those looking for the actual show content, move the slider over about 6 minutes, and we'll start at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock Central Time. But so with the Oklahoma situation, we have James Adelot out. We have Rick Smith out. We have Kim McLean out. We picked a good night, didn't we, Kevin?
It's going to be a whale of a show, isn't it?
Sounds like you are getting me on here. You're digging at the bottom of the barrel.
I was going to say.
What do you mean? What do you mean, man? You're the best looking guy.
Crab sandwich you got on the show tonight, Buddy Rowe.
Jonathan's got the look. He's got the media star look, the aura, the countenance about him.
It's the blur. Don't be fooled. I'm not.
That's one of those. That's one of those things you can put on the screen behind you or whatever. He's putting like a good looking suit on, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hey, what are you already streaming, or are we live?
We are live. We are live.
I got a good story
on
for you,
the
but I can't tell you on the live show. We'll wait till it's over.
Now we'll say we are live on YouTube, but this part does not go on the audio. And about 75% of those that consume this listen to the audio, but 25% watch. So you will have those that watch, and I would imagine there are going to be many.
The story I would tell you, somebody would find it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was about to say we know people in high places do watch this. Jen, you made it. You made it.
I'm here for now. Hello. Who knows what's going to happen? But
yes, yeah. Stay as long as you can.
You bet.
And hopefully Dr. Jacobs can join us. That would be outstanding.
Yeah.
And let's see. Here comes Melissa. Did you send any audio this week by chance, Jen? If so, I did not.
No, I didn't get to it this week. So I'll start back normal next week.
Okay. No, I know it's very hectic for everybody. So again, we're going to start the show here in 3.5 minutes at the top of the hour. And we are, and again, most people watch this later. And again, this is Monday, May 6th. We're right about 7 o'clock Central Time. We're watching the severe storms evolving in the high risk over Oklahoma. And obviously, Rick Smith. And for those that don't know, Rick is the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norman. So obviously, he's out. And James Adelot is chief meteorologist for the Fox affiliate in Tulsa. And obviously, he's out. And of course, Kim McLean is there in Norman. And she's obviously not going to be able to make it. But and Bill Murray is on a pub crawl in Beverly Hills. I bet you I'm the only guy on this show that's ever heard of the show The Beverly Hillbillies. This was a show back in the 1960s. What?
Oh,
you guys know about this.
Yeah.
It was about, Jed Clampett and his family, and they hit oil and got rich, and they moved to Beverly Hills. And so Bill Murray is our Beverly Hillbilly from Alabama out there tonight. So he will not be able to be on the show. And Troy is also out. And I think, what was his excuse, Jen? Troy's excuse?
Classes. I think he's doing
finals.
Yeah.
Finals week at UT. But the right people are on this show here. This is going to be good.
That's
and
right.
Hopefully Neil can join us here in just a little bit. But no, I've got some of the Oklahoma City live coverage on the monitor in front of me watching. And you know, the one I tell people this all the time, and I think it's the right thing to do. I like to watch others do severe weather. You can learn from best practices. You can learn things from different people. And again, we're all different. That's the one thing about us. We are all different. The way we communicate, and that's why people have a choice. If you don't like me, that's great. Watch the other guy. We try and communicate the same message here. But got some of the Oklahoma City guys up, and they're about to go into darkness out there soon. So they'll, you know, that's one of their strengths is having the ability to see this stuff. And they've got all these live streams and spotters. But when they go to dark, hey, they're in our world now. Yes, the nighttime severe weather episodes. Here comes Dr. J. All right. Yes.
Yay!
You know, I'd like to hear some Kevin Laws stories from Neil, from the old college days.
I'd like
Neil,
to
have you got any Kevin Laws stories from the college days? We're not on the show yet. This is the pre-show.
He was a truck driver now. Come on. Truck drivers always have good stories.
I can't. I'll tell you two funny stories.
No, don't
Oh,
do that.
wait. Let's do it on the show. No, this is too good. This is too good. We're coming up at the top of the hour in like 20 seconds. So let's get the recorders going because I sense this is going to be good.
Kevin's getting nervous.
No, he's starting to sweat.
I know what he's going to say, and it's not funny. It's not a funny story at all.
I think it's going to be good. If Neil says it's true, I know it's true. All right, let's get the recorders going here. This is track 1 and track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You've heard James say it a million times. Respect the polygon. At Weather Call, we call, text, and email you when you're in the polygon. So in a way, we make the polygon better. With solutions for personal use, businesses, schools, pools, playgrounds, and RVs, there's a Weather Call solution that's right for you. Check us out at weathercallservices.com.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Hey, this is WeatherBrains, the weekly show all about weather. This is episode number 955. This is for the 6th of May, 2024. And obviously, it's going to be an interesting show. For those that are watching live, they are fully aware of the fact that we have a very active severe weather situation in progress in Oklahoma. We have a high risk, level 5 out of 5, which means we, of course, will not have Rick Smith on the show tonight, will not have James Adelot on the show tonight, and will not have Kim McLean on the show tonight. But we will get a debrief from them next week. But we do have back on the show Dr. Neil Jacobs. Neil, let's see, were you in Charleston?
I'm back in Charleston. I had quite the adventure down in the Everglades and the Keys, but I drove back up here yesterday.
Ooh, that's a long drive. Goodness, how long did it take?
Well, I was down in Flamingo for the most part, so that's probably about a 9-hour drive. But then on the way back, I was further. I was north of Miami, so it was only about 7 hours. Plus, it was not a weekday, so I didn't hit traffic in Jacksonville.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being back with us. I see Jen Naramore is here. Jen, you're watching storms with one eye while you're watching us on the other eye, right?
That's right. Yeah, just kind of monitoring Kansas right now to see if I'll need to hop on and go do anything. But things have kind of, we have 3 stations lined up on I-70. And so Hayes got cleared. Salina's almost in the clear. Now we're kind of watching Topeka and then eventually Kansas City. So things seem to be okay right now. And then obviously you got the radar pulled up and watching what's happening in Oklahoma. Took a while to see all the ingredients come together, but things are looking a little hairy now for our Oklahoma friends. It's been watching the chat there. They do such an amazing job in that Norman chat. Just so good with the information and the stuff that they put out on social media. It's been really great. And things could get interesting for me tomorrow. They've upped the chances for tornadoes here. And Columbus to Dayton up into my neck of the woods. So I'll be watching that again. Hopefully it won't be my 3rd trip to the basement this year. So we'll see what happens. And Troy's here. Troy, hi.
I hear that laugh. I hear
That's
that
right.
melodious laugh. Troy, you made it.
Yeah, and I'm here for just a few minutes. I've got company tonight. I've got grades that got to be released, but I wanted to see Kevin and our guests tonight and at least say hello to them. And before I bowed out in about 15 minutes or so, just wanted to say hello. So.
No.
Well, you're a very good man to join us here. So, again, Bill is out tonight, so I'll kind of be guiding the discussion. So, we'll kind of bring in our guest, and we will introduce a friend of the show, Kevin Laws. Kevin is the Science Operations Officer at the National Weather Service in Birmingham. And Kevin, for those that don't know, explain exactly the role of a SOO.
Jack of all trades, master of none. Probably we do admin duties all the way to training, and I do some severe weather operations and try to keep everybody on the straight and narrow as far as the forecast and severe weather goes. And so I enjoyed it. The job's changed a lot over the years. It used to be strictly about training and training plans, and I probably spend about 5% of my time on that now, and it's more just about keeping everything in front of us. This year's been quiet, though. I mean, I think 4 or 5 tornadoes this year for our area. It's nothing. I mean, I don't even recall a year this quiet.
Now, you're not supposed to say that word in the medical field or the weather business. You don't say the Q word because you know what happens. But yes, it has been remarkably calm. And I will say this, Kevin, the decade of the 80s was really calm here. The entire decade was calm here. And then it kind of broke out in the 90s. But no, we have enjoyed a break. But before we introduce Jonathan and Melissa, Neil, give us a good story. You guys go back a long way. You and Kevin go back a long way. I'd like to hear a good story about Kevin Laws.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of stories, but I can't name names or places. But let me see. You take your pick here. Do you want the fire alarm story, the potato gun story, or the minivan and computer story?
I want the potato gun story. That sounds like that's the classic. As Kevin melts in his chair, for those that are not watching.
Wait, did he ever tell you the story about how he lied his way into being a cook down in Charleston?
Yes, he did tell that story.
He did tell that
He actually did. He did.
He did.
That was a good one too.
Just give us the little potato gun story. I got to hear this one.
All right, so I'm not going to say who it was, but we had brought a potato gun to the roof of the lab building back when you could get on the roof, and we thought it'd be funny just to see how far we could shoot a potato. And I won't name the TV station either, but there was a TV station nearby that had this giant satellite dish that we actually were able to hit from the roof with a potato. And it made quite a loud noise.
It's all in the name of science, right?
Well, speaking of science, the fire alarm story also happened on the top floor of that same lab building. We would work till like 2 a.m. I don't know what it is now, but it used to be on. You remember that I think it was the 6th floor, right? The computer lab up there.
Mm-hmm. Back in they had the old the gym pack computer up there, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. with Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we would go to the gas station and buy like these 3-liter things of Mountain Dew and just drink them and stay up all night and work. And I don't know exactly how we got our hands on dry ice, but we realized that if you have a little bit of like warm carbonated beverage and you stick dry ice in there and then cap it off, the pressure expands rapidly. And so we stuck it in there, and then we put the 3-liter thing in the stairwell. And then probably 2 or 3 minutes later was the loudest explosion I think I've ever heard. Now, it wasn't like flammable, it was just pressure, but the pressure wave was so high that it set off the fire alarms. And fire truck, I guess everyone came because we couldn't figure out how to turn the alarms off, and we all had to evacuate the building. I think it's like 1 o'clock in the morning anyway.
I'll tell you now
I thought the fire, the sprinklers were going to go off, and I was like, if we wet all this computer stuff, they're going to kick us out of school. We're going to be done forever. But
I will say the
didn't-
working show title right now is Potato Guns and Fire Alarms.
Yeah.
This could be one of the greatest show titles ever.
So that's the winner. Yep.
Melissa Sizemore is with the Jefferson County, Alabama Emergency Management Agency. Melissa, give us your official title here.
I'm an emergency management officer with the Jefferson County EMA.
So it's like Kevin's position, the Sue. What exactly is your title, your role there at the EMA?
So I do a lot of things. I wear a lot of hats. I manage our planning program. I manage our social media and public information program. And I also do the majority of our forecasting and weather aspect of things in-house too.
And for those that don't know, Jefferson County is the county in which Birmingham is located. That's the largest population center in the state. So it's how many employees work with the Jefferson County EMA? How many folks are there?
We have a director, a deputy director, 5 EM officers, well, 4 EM officers now, and then an admin.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And we're basically doing a little mini IWT here, an integrated warning team. And also we have Jonathan Gaddy. I first met this guy when he was in Calhoun County, Alabama. Jonathan, remember that? Calhoun County, Alabama?
Yes, sir. Hometown.
Are they still in that building by the old Kitty Stone Elementary, the EMA?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful. It's like an old Works Progress Administration National Guard armory. So still there.
So tell us about your winding journey from Calhoun County. You're the long and winding road.
I floated around. So I spent a few years there as the local emergency manager and worked several tornado outbreaks, including the April 27 event. Spent a few years at the state as the deputy director, running the program and driving Kevin and James and Melissa crazy in that capacity. The last couple of years, I've been teaching full-time out at Idaho State University in the Homeland Security program and doing consulting. And so I've had my hands in just about everything lately, and will soon be rejoining the faculty there at Jacksonville State University in Alabama. So.
And they do have a really good emergency management program, right, Jonathan?
It's the largest one in the country. Jackson State has a really awesome program. It's well respected all the way up to the doctoral level, and was one of the first emergency management programs in the world, really.
Jonathan, Troy, yeah, question for you real quick, because I'm going to bow out here. But Jonathan, you and Melissa, this is a big, I'm amazed by what I'm seeing. It's a growing field. It truly is one of the areas that we're seeing tremendous amount of growth in emergency management nowadays.
I think I'm interested to hear Melissa's perspective and how things have changed at the local level, but I'll just say, I think, our whole society is evolving around resilience, and folks are, realizing more and more every day that we have to work with against nature and not just fight against it.
Yeah.
So it's an evolving field. It's not just about plans and operations stuff anymore. Definitely I think it's going to change a lot in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, for sure. I think emergency management in its own is in its infancy as a career too. You got to think professional EMs didn't really become a true thing until really after 9/11, once all of the doctrine and stuff like that came out after the Twin Towers and the terrorist attacks. So we're still much in its infancy. Education is still very much in its infancy, and we're now seeing more career EMs rather than, firefighters, fire chiefs, police chiefs retiring and becoming emergency managers. So we're very much in this cusp of change of kind of what an emergency manager is at all levels of government.
Melissa and Jonathan, and everyone here, I can't go into much detail, but a lot of EMs very busy these days, especially at universities with everything that's going on. And it's not something you really hear about, but it's something that we're seeing more and more of with the unrest at universities across the country.
Oh, yeah. I know at least here several years ago, we also dealt with civil unrest here in the downtown Birmingham area and had to manage that on our own locally. But it's very much an evolving field, and our responsibilities are expanding as well with the types of hazards that we're having to deal with.
But the weather stuff, you never want to lose sight of that, because that's the one, I guess, Melissa and Jonathan will come get you quicker than anything else, especially if you're in a geographically enhanced area of the United States, which in y'all's case, the Central Plains tonight and Alabama tonight, not Alabama tonight, but then Central Plains tonight and Alabama, I guess, James, anytime.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And I'm sorry, James, for stepping on you.
No, you step on me anytime. I deserve to be stepped on. And also, before we get to Kevin and kind of start the discussion here, I get a lot of high school kids talk to me about they love weather. They just love it, but they just struggle with math.
Yeah.
And I recommend. I said, have you thought about going into emergency management? And I think that's a viable option for younger people that are interested in weather. But I think EM is fascinating. And Melissa and Jonathan, people don't understand what you do. They think that you show up when there's a tornado, or you show up when you guys said it's nonstop. It's so many things. You have to know so much about so many different issues and hazards.
It's kind of like what Troy was pointing to. We sit at the center of a whole community, and I like to think about it. If you think about an ancient civilization where you've got somebody watching the gate, we're kind of those folks. We have to keep our eyes on everything that's happening internally and externally, and we get dragged into a lot of stuff. And at best, what the emergency managers can bring into the fight is a strong network and relationships. And that means tapping into the scientific community, the weather community, as well as, the faith-based church, nonprofit organizations, police, fire. And it's amazing to see how these communities come together in times of crisis and suddenly, coalesce and start cooperating. And it's a really special thing to be part of.
And it's a great close relationship between the guy that's on the left-hand side of my screen, between the National Weather Service, Kevin's offices, and the other Weather Service offices around the country. That is a very close relationship. So,
yeah, the EM community, I think, does a tremendous amount, but we could do more in terms of education, and especially letting our lawmakers know how important the Weather Service is.
Yep.
That's a continuing talking point. It's amazing to me how many people don't know that we've got well over 100 weather office staff. They turn on the weather and they think it comes out of thin air. No pun intended, but it's like there are people involved in this round the clock.
So, for those that have never heard of this concept of integrated warning team, Kevin, kind of explain what is an IWT.
I think probably it really got started in earnest. Well, everything in the weather world, at least the modern weather world, revolves around the outbreaks of April and May of 2011. You got to remember, we had 2 outbreaks here in Alabama that were very significant. We broke the state record, all-time state record, in the 1 month of April with, I think, over 110 tornadoes. I don't remember how many exactly, but it broke the year-long state record in just basically 2 days. And then you follow that the next month with Joplin, with the same amount of people killed almost. And it's just like you've got 700 fatalities in the 2-month period. It's unheard of, you would think, in 2011. From there, the Weather Service media, a lot of us said, okay, we've got to stop what we're doing and check ourselves, so to speak, right? And we brought in social sciences on board. First time I think we'd done that. Like, the earthquake community and other communities in the science field had done that a long time ago as far as messaging is concerned. We had to do it here. But what we found was that our partnerships weren't where they needed to be, right? Am I stating this right? I mean, we sort of had our own agendas in a weird way, even though we're kind of working toward the same thing. And it was time to bring all of us together, the EM community, social science, media, the Weather Service, and we had to get on the same page, okay? The communication had to be there. We had to, things that came out of it. Chat really got going in earnest. I know that we'd had some of that before here, but it was all these things that we could be doing differently when it came to weather and planning, emergencies, severe weather operations, all of it. And so, for a while there, I think we're planning one coming up again in September, I think, this year. But for a while there, at least after April 27th, we meet year or every other year, and all of us get together in the same room and talk about the same issues that we're all having. And the communication lines were wide open after that. Everybody could get to know everybody on a first name basis, and that just helps tremendously.
And I think that's been a great improvement, because quite frankly, we didn't know each other. We really didn't. And the fact that we get together and the chat's great. It's marvelous. It's critical. It's crucial. But sitting down in a room where you're together and you can talk and you can laugh and you can cry if you want to and whatever, I think that's a really good thing. And we're all trying to do the same thing: mitigate loss of life when we have high impact weather events. That's what the EMs do. That's what the Weather Service does. That's what we try and do. And we kind of have to be on the same page, Kevin, as a unit here. And that's what this is all about, right?
Well, if you don't, I mean, you can look forward to a tragic end, most likely, because if we're not on the same page and we don't have the same message and we don't know each other and we're all in our own little worlds doing our own little thing, a lot of issues start to happen from that.
By the way, Troy's got a bow. Troy, thanks for hopping in. Y'all have a great night.
I'm thinking about all of our friends in Oklahoma. Melissa and Jonathan, thank you. Kevin, thank you, my friend. And I'm sorry I'm going to miss the presentation. I interrupted you, Kevin. Please go ahead.
No, good to see you, Troy. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch. And so I think we need to get out of our own little worlds and into the same world, like you were saying. And I think that was the critical piece that we were missing all along. And I think the relationships have never been better. I mean, and some of this, the ugliness and things that between EMs and media and the Weather Service, I think those things, we could put a lot of that behind us. And I wasn't too much involved in I'm sort of the younger generation, I guess, so to speak. I don't come from the 80s and 90s when a lot of this bickering back and forth. But I'm sure, James, you have tons of stories to share about into a mess with somebody and somewhere, EM somewhere, and you don't get along, and somebody gets cleared up very, very easily, and misunderstandings we can put them behind us. And because, like you said, we're all on the same team. We have the same goal. And I'll let Jonathan tell the story, but the Jacksonville tornado is a great example of us being on the same page and supporting each other. I don't know if you remember that story, Jonathan, from that EF3 that hit Jacksonville State there a couple years back.
Oh yeah, and I'm happy to go back to that memory. But just for the benefit of the listeners, if you think about the partnership between the three elements here, you've got the media, the emergency management community, and the Weather Service. If you think about that Clint Eastwood movie where the three people are looking at each other and they don't know who's going to shoot first, right? That's sort of the way things have been. And what James alluded to is absolutely the case. Like, we're all on the same team with the same mission, and we shouldn't be waiting on one person to do something. We have to work together as a single unit. That Jacksonville storm back in 2018, which was that was the F3, right? That hit the university. Didn't have any loss of life, thank God. But I'm running the emergency operations center at that time. We had I think an enhanced or moderate risk leading into that. So we had leaned forward and made some readiness measures. Like, we already knew who was in town, had phone numbers on all the paramedics and everybody. So we were ready to go. The storm hits, and Kevin's calling me on my cell phone. He's like, "Hey, this thing's coming right over your office. You need to get in the basement." And I'm literally in the basement in our bunker, on the phone with him while he's on the radar. And James is on TV broadcasting, looking at the CC and, talking about the lofted debris and everything else. And, we're sending out all alerts, through all different modes. And I was standing in the 911 center on the phone with the Weather Service, and we've got the computer there, laptop in the chat, dropping stuff in that James is repeating on air while the 911 calls are coming in. And that's my best case scenario, because we're able to take information live in real time from what's happening and get it out to the public. And what we've learned through social science is that the more information we can give folks and the accuracy of what's happening, the more likely they're going to be to take some protective action. And luckily we saw a lot of that, and it saved a lot of lives.
So let's just open up a discussion, Kevin. And again, it's something I've voiced here, but and again, the floor is open for anybody. Just anybody that wants to talk. We're doing a little mini IWT that happens to be on a video and an audio show that's heard by thousands of people. So, but I have great concern over the amount of hyperbole, the hyperbolic language, the number of false alarms, the fear porn, and forget the YouTubers and the TikTokers. We can't control any of that. And I'm not saying they're all bad. They're not. Some of them are bad, but it's starting to creep to me within the professional weather enterprise. And it's almost as though we're trying to scare people and use that as a motivational tool. And I don't like that. So I'd like everybody's thoughts on this. Kevin, I'll shoot. We'll go for you. And again, we're all, for those that don't know, we're straight shooters here. You know, inevitably we're going to say something that'll make somebody mad, but it's okay because we're trying to, again, mitigate loss of life. We have to be together as a unit, and we cannot control what the world does out there on YouTube and TikTok and everything else and the weather entertainers, but we can control what we do. So Kevin, what do you say?
Maybe it's good Kim wasn't on the show tonight, because I wanted to hit her with this, because you're talking about, well, we talked about it before. The warning process is not the last 15 minutes when the tornado warning's at your doorstep. The warning process starts a week in advance, days in advance, and you're preparing people mentally for what challenges may come ahead. And it may be winter weather, it may be flooding, it could be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be tornadoes.
Or hurricanes, yeah.
Hurricane's a big one, right? I mean, it's just, you can't get away from it. It just seems like everywhere you turn, you can't get away from it. And you know, I think I'll disagree with you a little bit, because you talk about we can't control the YouTubers and the TikTok. I get that too, but a lot of people are being driven to those platforms, and I think we're going to see a continued uptick in those digital kind of platforms as time goes on, like you said. And you've talked about for a decade that the Ron Burgundy shows are coming to an end very quickly, right? So where are people driving? Where are we driving people to? And that's to these TikTokers and social media. So at some point, I think we have to address that. But what I want to talk to Kim about more, and I do wish she was on the show. I'm just making a joke about that. But I think there's been not to say false, but there's been mixed results on how the false alarms are impacting the general public. You know, the notion is that you would think that if you cry wolf too many times, people don't take you seriously. And I've seen mixed results on that. I really have. And it just depends on social science. It's not any good social science person will tell you that study of human behavior is 1,000 times harder than weather behavior. So it seems like there has been a mixed bag on what false alarms really do to people and how it controls their mental ability. But I still have just basic questions about how many people actually follow weather on a daily basis, and what that looks like on a day like today, when you have a high risk in Norman versus, let's just say today was a slight risk. How many people are more engaged today than they would be just sort of a normal run of the mill day, even though we get the most tornadoes during a slight risk. So it seems like, I think it's a very complex problem, but there's no doubt about it that for some reason in the last year, 6 months, that the uptick on the weather hyperbole has just skyrocketed. And I don't know if it's corporate media doing it. I don't know if it's commercial driven. I'm not 100% sure. Sometimes I get a sense that may be, we're almost on a quota system on how many weather events we have to promote. But I see stuff about alerts for foggy conditions and wet roads, and just everywhere you look, it's like alert, 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 alert. And I'm just like, eventually that seems like that would wear you down. So then turn it around after you hear that 10,000 times, and you have a real event like tonight, or a higher risk end event that you have to alert people. You know, how do you do it now after you've alerted 10,000 times? Well, this is the 10,001. This is a special case. It's a even higher alert. So you just have to keep raising that bar up as we go along. So how does that impact people mentally? I don't know.
Melissa, let's hear from you. What was the EM perspective on this?
I have a lot to unpack on this.
Oh, good. Good.
So today, just in general, you know, I'm blessed that when there's high risk events that I'm allowed to follow, I'm allowed to observe and watch while I'm at work. And I'm scrolling the the X, the Twitter. And then, I'm seeing people tell people, push out across their followers that you will not survive a tornado today unless you are underground. Everybody above ground will like meet their end. And these are professional broadcasters saying that, which we all know is untrue. For one. So that's my like hot plate ticket right now. That really kind of like rubbed me the wrong way today. But outside of that, from an emergency management perspective, let's say in the Deep South, when we've got slight risk, enhanced risk, whatever type of severe weather risk in the spring, and let's say it doesn't pan out, we have watches. There is a financial implication to that on our end. So we're now looking at the aspect of, okay, is it actually going to happen? Are we actually going to have storms? Are we actually going to have severe weather? Or are we paying overtime for individuals to staff our EOC for an event that there is a lot of conditional uncertainty and that may or may not have been communicated? I'm very thankful that we have a WFO that's very clear and concise on when things are, there's a lot of failure modes in certain setups. They let us know, they communicate that, but that may not be the same across the board. I have several colleagues in emergency management across the United States where their DSS and their work with their local WFOs and stuff like that is not the same like what we get with WFO Birmingham. And they're kind of out doing their own thing. There's no standardized way that offices push that information out to their partners. So that then becomes problematic of, okay, well, the people in the Southeast are getting this really great service, but, these individuals in other parts of the United States are not. And then we get down to the public and the communication aspect of things. I do think that there is some sort of implication on first alert weather days because we have fog, or first alert weather days because we're getting below 32 degrees and it's going to be cold. I think there is this numbness that people start to feel. I mean, we talk about that here in our office, oh, it's another first alert weather day, haha. And then they come and talk to me and we look and see what WFO Birmingham's pushing out, and well, guess it's not. So yeah, that's kind of my spicy take on that one.
All right, Jonathan, what say you?
I have lots of thoughts. I think
good.
I think we can learn a lot from the marketing and entertainment industries. There's a movie out this year, right? We've got another Twisters out. So the challenge, as I see it, as someone who's coming at it from an EM perspective about trying to keep people safe, is how do I get people to emotionally buy into the message? And there are lots of ways to do that. And I think we have to, all of us, no matter what part of this we're working in, keep in mind that the way it looks from the outside is very different from what we see inside. It's kind of like, rocket stuff. Like, I don't work for NASA. I have no idea what goes on there, but I have like a very naive, they send people to space and they build rockets. And so for folks on the outside of the weather and emergency management industry, they see us kind of the same way. Like, it's a black box in the sense that what we actually do every day is not what most people think we do. We have to meet them where they are. And part of that is simplifying things and finding ways to communicate that, that resonate. And I think we have to walk a fine line because there is, profit in this. We have to pay the bills and keep the lights and transmitters on. We have to keep the radar working. But at the same time, we don't want to overblow things, and certainly don't want to scare people. And James, you've made the statement before, right? I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to take it serious. I'm paraphrasing. I want you to take it seriously and know what to do. And we have to establish that. And that's a relationship of trust with the viewers, with the public, with our colleagues. And, that's where I think the payoff is how do we build that relationship of trust? It's not so much about how it's packaged. It's not the branding. It's not what color scale or what first alert or whatever logo you use. It's about trust. And that speaks, like the broadcaster perspective, it's broadcasting as a public service, and upholding that as a value. And that's where, when we get into the streamers and some of the new media stuff, that kind of falls apart, and there's not a structure around that yet. I think that's something we need to think about.
And again, and I'll say this, and of course we're broadcasting this on television now, but linear television died years ago. The number of people that watch traditional newscast, it's a fraction of what it used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Goodness gracious. I reach on an average day 20 times more people on social media compared to television. So all of that, code red, first alert, weather emergency day, that's going to fade as the influence wanes, and those on the social digital side will be the dominant force. If they're not already, and they probably are. And we again, so much of that we cannot control, but I do think it's good that we have now an AMS digital seal for those that don't know. And Neil, I don't know if you're in on that, but do we have any seal holders yet? Neil, do you know, with AMS, with the digital seal?
I don't know if they've officially started issuing it yet or not. I'm not exactly sure what the protocol is. I think I was more in the camp of just instigating it because I was so angry at general social media, but then people smarter than me figured out how to solve the problem. We'll see if it's actually working.
And Melissa, you say they have.
They have. I think they've gotten up to 10 potentially. I know NWA also has a digital seal as well. They've had a seal program for a while as well.
But I think that's important in that people need to find a credible source. That's what we always say. And when you're over on TikTok, most of this stuff, Neil, we got to get you on the talk. I mean, I think Neil would be a great TikTok guy. Don't you, Kevin, think Neil would be good on the talk?
Well, he'll be quiet.
Everyone for years has been trying to get me on social media. It's just I don't think social media is ready for my hot takes yet.
But anyway, having said that, I think that we have to teach people how to find a credible source on these platforms. They're going to go there. There is nothing we can do to stop them. And we need to, and I've said this before, I think we've lost connection with the people we serve. I really do. I honestly think in a lot of cases, we have lost the connection with the people we serve. If you go into a Dollar General, a Walmart, they'll talk to you. All these people groups are in there. They will talk to you and they will tell you things about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, if they're being underserved, how we can be better. And I just think we have to work on that connection. But having said all that, back to the original subject, Kevin, as I go into the Dollar Generals of the world, people are sick of the constant hype. They're sick of it. Doom, gloom, death, doom, gloom, destruction, death. That's all they hear. And they're bombarded with this stuff across, the social platforms, traditional broadcasters. Now, I'm not talking individual meteorologists. These are the corporate overlords that demand the weather alert, code red, first alert. And by the way, I don't do it to credit my people. I think they do it corporately, but they leave me alone. I don't do it. But they're sick of that. They're just sick of being bombarded with warning after warning after warning after warning after warning after warning. And in so many cases, they're false alarms. And I just think we need to sit back and review it and maybe do some constructive criticism. And the other thing I worry in the weather enterprise is that, we just call everybody that makes a critical comment a troll. Well, no, that we need constructive criticism, Kevin, to get better, don't we?
Oh yeah, of course we do, and I'm sure you get your fair share of it. Probably why I'm on social media myself. I'd probably be fired tomorrow. But let me ask you a question. Let's back up a second. Let's look at a broader view, because we talk about NWA and AMS seals and it being a legitimate source. Well, what defines something as a legitimate source these days? Because if I go on YouTube now and I'm looking at the hype videos that are out there, I mean, some of these people have millions, tens of millions of subscribers who watch their stuff. So whether they have a seal or not, they still are legitimate sources of information. I'm not saying they have legitimate information to share, but they're certainly legitimate sources to at least the people they follow. So what if we, I'll pitch an idea here. What if we expand out the IWT theory and we try to include, we may have to do it virtually. Not everybody can travel and today, and I get that. The Weather Service certainly is struggling with budgets and travel too. just like everybody else. But what if we at least had a virtual come together meeting one at a time, and we sort of hashed out some of these issues, and whether or not you have a seal, let's just set that aside for a minute. If people are having millions and tens of millions of subscribers, maybe it's time to bridge and reach out the relationship. Are we in that infancy stage where, whether we like the idea or not, it's the world we are going to inherit here very shortly, if we, like you said, if we haven't already. So let's at least try to reach out and bring those people into the IWT circle, the larger sense, and try and talk to them more about these kind of issues with social scientists on board who can present data, real data to them. I mean, is that an idea? Should we at least attempt it? I mean, I think we should.
Well, Jen says she has a thought here. So Jen, you hop in. What are your thoughts here?
Well, my thought was kind of piggybacked off what Jonathan was talking about when we were talking about why there's so much, hype and whatever. And I've mentioned a couple of times, and we've talked about it, there's just so much noise. And I think sometimes there's like a competition of who can be louder so they're actually heard. And that's how it comes across to me. I do like what Kevin's saying, though, of trying to incorporate, if this is where we're going into the digital stream, then maybe we should invite them to be a part of it. I do think that I liked the Tennessee Valley people we had on a couple of weeks ago. That group is amazing. And they are not covering the entire United States. They have a specific goal for a specific market and, the area that they're covering. And then that's what they focus in on. And they're building the trust on the digital platform. And I think that those type of things are very, very important. When you're trying to cover everything, it's just like, what is your goal? What is your end goal? And I think for some, they are trying to help people. I think sometimes it is just for entertainment, but is there a way that we can all kind of meet in the middle to make to get the right messaging out there, and where we are working toward the same goals? That would be the hope. So I do like that idea from Kevin, because that is, truly where we're going, which I think it is too, that we're going to start doing more of the digital platform type stuff. And Kevin, you wanted her on here. She is. Kim is just
Oh,
showed
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So
yes,
let's get her in here. Hi, Kim.
Good.
Hey, Kevin. Hey, John. Good to see you too. And Melissa, very wonderful to see this great crew here today. Sorry to be a little bit late, but I'm sure you all understand.
Yes.
We're just honored that you're here. How's the event unfolding? Real quick, give us an update. You're our correspondent on the scene.
Yeah. Well, it is a rainy mess. I mean, there's a line of storms out west of here. The storms fired along the dry line as we anticipated that they would. And now for us in the Oklahoma City metro, the question really becomes just how far south will that convective initiation progress. It has been a very consistent feature of the HRRR all day that around 10 o'clock, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, that it would fill in southward and include us. But the most recent updates are changing a little bit as they're really getting a handle on the realistic storm morphology and a little bit more of the environment. So it's everything from the 22Z HRRR said, well, the storms will part and Oklahoma City and Norman won't even see a drop of rain. And then the 23Z pretty much wipes out South Oklahoma City and some Tulsa suburbs and the casino down in Thackerville at the same time at like 11. So this is just still very much a wait and see kind of event. It's coming into the event, it really reminded me of the May 31st, 2013 day in some ways, just the feature of this extraordinarily potent environment alongside perhaps questionable coverage. We really weren't sure going into this day. The experts weren't really sure how many tornadoes we might see. And these are tough events to message. But yeah, you can see the storms are ramping up. And the message all day here has been that while there might not be a lot of storms and maybe not a lot of tornadoes, those that do form will be very dangerous and could be at the highest end of what we can see, the highest end damage potential. So one of the scary things in watching the coverage is there's not a lot to show people. It's all wrapped in rain, and pretty soon it's going to be dark. It's already starting to get dark. This is going to be a tough, long night here in Oklahoma across the entire state.
And as I have said many times in my life, predicting the future is hard. It really is. Kim, but I'm so glad you're here. But Neil, you had a couple of thoughts going back to the original topic. Neil, what do you think about what we've talked about?
I'm glad Kim's here because I'm going to tee up some stuff for her that we were talking about earlier. I like Kevin's proposal, but I'm pessimistic about it. I think it's worth trying, but my expectations that it'll be successful are pretty low just because of how much clickbait is incentivized by revenue. And like, I think clickbait is just diametrically opposed to reality, unfortunately. And I don't know that there's a way around that. I'd love to think that we could harness the viewership of these people, but if you go and talk to them, a lot of them will tell you they don't care about forecasting. They're in the weather entertainment business, whatever that is. For what we were talking about earlier, I was ranting to Kim earlier today over text about the different SPC levels and how I never could fully understand why moderate is more than enhanced. It seems backwards to me. But then I thought, she asked me, she's like, well, what other words would you use? So I started thinking like, how, if we just think like, how stupid can we get with hyperbole? I found this discussion on Reddit about these people trying to come up with better names to rank difficulty levels for like video games. And I just thought, I'm not saying this would work, but if you wanted to make things really ridiculous, something like nightmare would, that would scare people.
I'm scared now.
But I mean, like on a more serious note, I'd love to have Kim sort of explain this in greater detail because I kind of just used her insight on this. The Weather Act, the reauthorization just passed the full House, I guess a week or two ago. A lot of good stuff in there, but if you pay real close attention to some discussion on warnings communicated to the public, the actual language in there says, with the goal of informing response. And that wasn't what the original language said. The original language said resulting in response. And James, to your point earlier, the concern was if you put something about producing a result, it's going to sort of incentivize forecasters to use more coercive language because they're being judged on the result. And that's a slippery slope. Kim, do you want to shed more light on that since this was your idea?
Yeah, no. I mean, this is something I've been somewhat carefully shepherding for a long time since the original Weather Act. And there were a lot of ideas that were being floated about having some language and about our communication system having some specific goal for behavior. And there were really important questions that we needed to answer about what we were really trying to accomplish. And I think, it was also in the wake of some really serious conversations in our community about impact-based warnings. And there started to be this new paradigm that people were trying to wrap their arms around and trying to understand, is this a positive thing? What can we expect people to do differently on the timescale of a warning when you're giving them this impact messaging? Are we doing something useful? And frankly, in the social sciences, our research was still at a fairly early enough stage that it was tough to answer some of these questions. A lot of it was pretty philosophical. So I think when we're thinking about the promise of all of our forecasting technologies and what it could offer us, we have the opportunity to give people a range of the possibility spectrum and to tell them more faithfully what we can say with confidence and what we can't say with very much confidence at all. And it's in putting some of that into people's hands. And the art here is going to be deciding just how much to put in people's hands, but putting some of it in people's hands will allow them to make their own decisions about a risk that's worth attending to. We have created the system so far to be one size fits all, and the meteorologist is in this unenviable position of having to figure out, okay, now is when the community needs to be warned. Like, this is how much time you need, this is how much uncertainty you can bear, this is your false alarm tolerance. You kind of have to make those assumptions with a one size fits all system. But if in the future we're able to give people more information, then we could allow the forecaster to do the job of forecasting weather and not just having to determine risk and when it is potent enough to care about. Not that forecasters will be out of that entirely. They'll just have more tools to communicate with more people. So long-winded way of, I've tried to bring this around to, I know the topic today that I've missed so far is on false alarms. And perception of false alarms, when you're using exaggeratory language, it's going to increase. We have to be really careful about what we're trying to inspire, because it only works for a little while. You know, if you're going to really pump up that language to try to get people to act, then people are going to learn not to trust you. The literature is at least pretty clear on that. So the outstanding questions we earnestly do have are then about, well, how can we help to inform people, if that's going to be our goal, not just to get them to behave in some particular way. What does that mean? And yeah, it's a lot to also unpack. It's not necessarily its own very easy answer.
The one thing that you've taught me from the beginning is that, and by the way, the whole map project, I love it that we're going to be working on that this summer. We finally got some traction behind that since 2017. So thank you. I'm glad you're on board with that. That would be exciting. But the one thing that you've taught me from the very beginning is that, and I'm not, I'll point the finger if you want me to, but the media, James Spann, the media, people seek that secondary information. Okay. And you guys on television, be it digital or traditional TV, you're the secondary confirmation and information. So what you say matters. And I hate to put it in your lap, but you're the ones who, the media folks are the ones who have to pick up that and run with it, because you're the ones who have to spur people to action. What we do here by mashing a button, I think, has little importance to what you guys, how you guys translate it. You're basically the communicators of this information, which is critical, you know? So whether you're saying, hey, you know, this circulation is dead, it doesn't look like there's a warning, all the way to this is an emergency situation, how you tailor your response was really probably what provokes people to do something. And I'll challenge you to come on the next outbreak that we have here, come with me on a survey and let's go house to house and let's talk to the people who are impacted. And I think it would be good for media partners to hear, like talk to Jonathan and Melissa and the folks that when we go house to house and we talk to everybody who's been impacted, listen to what they say and what they were doing in the minutes leading up to it and what they were doing days leading up to it. And I think it would do the media folks, our partnership with the media, a great deal of service if they were able to hear, like you said, it's one thing to hear Dollar General and the Walmart folks, but to hear people who are directly impacted, what were you doing? What were you watching? What were you thinking? And I think you'll get into the minds of the ordinary folks even more so than just, you know, talking to them at Dollar General and Walmart, which I agree with. So,
all right, Melissa, go.
Building kind of off of what Kevin said, he kind of led into what I was originally going to say, but we do these things called hot washes in the emergency management field and after action reviews. It may be something that if we do have a large event in an area, we as a integrated warning team should also get together and talk about what we did, what we heard, what we experienced, and then what are those steps we can do to do better next time. Because just like Kevin said, going door to door and surveying, because Weather Service has to do a survey, emergency managers also have to go out and go door to door and do damage surveys. We talk to everybody impacted. We learn so many vital pieces of information out there talking with these individuals, learning about what they did and what they felt, why they took action. And those are things that we bring back to our office and talk about so we can change what our process is leading up to events and figuring out how we could potentially message things better on our end, also message things better with our stakeholders, because that's one thing as an emergency manager that we do is we have this large Rolodex that when we have large severe weather events getting ready to impact us, we're talking with all of our police chiefs, all of our fire chiefs, all of our school superintendents. We're talking with our nonprofit groups, our volunteer organizations active in disasters. We're talking with, our religious partners. We're essentially everyone, our hospitals. We're letting them know what we're anticipating, what our suggestions are. We're relaying the information from the Weather Service to them. And then typically after we have impacts, we meet with those same individuals that responded to the area and we talk about it and figure out what we can do better. And that's not necessary. We may be doing that individually as a group, but maybe we need to think about doing that as an integrated warning team as a whole to figure out how we can continue to make forward progress when communicating to the people.
I want to jump in here too with a couple of thoughts, and I may take this way off in a different direction. So I apologize. Kim and Kevin know I'm bad about this. So, we should not confuse our world that we live in every day with reality, right? Like whatever's out there, this landscape that we're interacting with has its own rules, and society does kind of like what it wants, right? The world selects its own champions. We all come from a particular background, whether it's in broadcasting or science, and we kind of have a way that we're wired as far as where we're going to put credibility and how we think things need to work. That's not what's real for everybody else. It's like what James is always saying about, going to the dollar store and having a conversation. We have to hit reality kind of head on. So one of the things that, has been useful in my career, like in disaster recovery especially, is to just watch what happens. And a community will select its own leaders, right? So to the extent we can get in front of the folks that have followers, those are opportunities for us not to go impose our way of thinking on them, but to say, look, we want to enable you to be more successful. And we want you to be part of this community. And we can share some things that we've learned and bring you into the fold that will amplify your ability, to get done the things that you want without pushing them out or saying, you're not real, you're not valid, you have to do it our way or it's the highway. That's a really tough thing to do. And we can only do that from a position of strength, right? On that point, I think it's crucial for folks like on this call, right? Like to recognize you're the heroes. Nobody else is coming, right? Like when these bad things happen, you all and your peers and your counterparts are actually the ones that people are counting on. And, y'all live this every day. You've had those personal stories, but all of us, when we're in a crisis, we think sometimes maybe not enough of the responsibility that we carry. And we have to know our own limits in that and trying to connect with other folks. That's a hard thought to hang on to. It's like, these communities don't know what the work that we do. They don't understand like the systems and the processes and the relationships. And yet at the same time, they're counting on us, right? And we have to just meet them where they are and all of that. So the weird piece of this to me is thinking about, this, our community, whether it's a market area for broadcasting, or if it's a county warning area for NWS, or whatever the jurisdiction is for an emergency manager, thinking about it as an ecosystem. And I think all the time about, and this is something I talk about in one of the leadership classes I do, what happened in Yellowstone, right, with the wolves. So the wolves were wiped out in the 1930s. And if you worked in the Yellowstone and you were doing any kind of research, you just saw the park as it was without the wolves. That's the only reality you knew. But when the wolves were reintroduced, everything changed. The river changed, it changed its direction. The entire ecosystem turned over because different animals were eating different plants, and it had an effect on everything. And I think we have to be sensitive to that when we're looking at the ecosystem of our communities, right? Where is nature trying to take things? What are people wanting? Well, how is it manifesting? And how do we get in front of that to understand, what the trajectory it is? And sometimes it may be flipping that switch in our mind to allow something into that reality that we've been trained doesn't belong there. It may have a role, and if we give it a safe space to sort of exist within some safety parameters, it might actually help things, in a much bigger picture.
Let me back that up with a good story. So, I want to say it's spring of 2021, and we have a small tornado outbreak. We had to go survey in a place called Sweetwater, Alabama. You ever heard of Sweetwater, Alabama?
I have been to Sweetwater High School. I knew the principal and the football coach.
I don't even think Sweetwater has a Jacks. They might. They have one in Linden. I don't know if they have one in Sweetwater.
No, they don't.
Okay. So you got to remember how much the world was different. Everybody's world was different in 2021, right? COVID was at its peak. People were COVID crazy. In fact, we were informed to not even go out on surveys riding in the same vehicle together. That's how nuts everything was at that time, without full beekeeper suits on. And we get out there and we get on the track surveying these folks. I mean, they're good home folks. COVID was the least of their concerns. They had, it was like a different world you're entering in some of these places that we have to survey, and some places we go. They're salt of the earth's people. They're worried about putting food on the table for their families. They're not worried about COVID and what the impacts are, or vaccines, or what if they're being mandated to take one or not. And yet they just got hit by an EF2 tornado, and it's changed their lives forever. And our paths crossed there. But even though they didn't recognize that COVID even existed, which I was just shocked by, and this was an entire community basically where we were surveying, everybody in that community took action, went to the safe place. And I think, Jonathan, I'd actually emailed you about that at some point, about how the message had gotten there to those folks. And, you would think that no way, this doesn't exist out there because there's no signal. And, we can't even transmit back to the office the data points because there's not enough signal to even do that. But yet they were able to use their whatever procedures they had. And I talked to them some in depth. They were at home. It was late. It was like 11 o'clock. They were in bed. They got up, went to the church down the street, not next door, down the street. So they had to do all this in the middle of the night in a rainstorm, trees crashing through their mobile home. They would have been killed for sure. I mean, one right through the master bedroom. And it was a manufactured home, right to the master bedroom, but did the right things, and it saved their lives. But I was just amazed about how their view of what was happening in the world was just so much different, radically different than ours. And we're just like a few counties away. And it's a stark reminder of how complex human behavior really is.
And I sometimes wonder, Kim, if I think behavioral science is a lot harder than physical science. Don't you agree?
Well, having studied both, yeah, I think, especially for us trying to study what we're trying to improve the communication system, there's such a fundamental need for some basics to wrap our arms around. It's a very new part of our science, and in its own way, it's a very new science. And So we just need to give each other some grace in this. I think field to reach people, and meteorology itself is so new as a science and then also as a practice. And I think, the systems that have sprung up have people behind them with such brilliance and bravery and heart for their fellow man. And I think we can just recognize that trying to make this better, it is going to be very complicated. It's just a hard set of problems. I was thinking earlier today, part of what I was running past Neil was a, just an observation that I've made working in NSEP. I've seen the convective outlook have its share of success and also challenges. But I've also seen the Hurricane Center struggle to pull themselves out from the shadow of this one scale that doesn't communicate a lot of the threat of a hurricane effectively. And the Space Weather Prediction Center, they were noting in Space Weather Week just a couple weeks ago that for some of their products, they spend more time telling people why they shouldn't be concerned about a specific, threat reaching a certain level than they do actually talking about impacts that could occur. Like they're backtracking their product quite a bit. And it just strikes me that we're all sort of looking around at each other like, oh, well, there's a 5-point scale over here. So that must be what we're supposed to do here is make some kind of scale. And then people will understand and be able to respond to the situation. And very literally in space weather, that's why the tiers are 5, because Saffir-Simpson had 5. It kind of breaks my heart to say that, but that's the truth. And okay, so it gives us a starting point to talk to people. But yeah, these problems are a little bit more challenging. And so changing those systems, it might just be a very different way of thinking. I really appreciate what you said, James. The more that I am getting involved in this, the more I'm realizing it's not enough to just have any social scientist you throw in this, because they need to be familiar enough with the problem to know how to advise you. They're not going to just come in and say magic off the shelf. 5 tiers is best. Here's the perfect words. Here's how you order your colors. They have to know something about the content and the context. And I'm encountering a lot of, oh, we'll just hire whatever social scientist over here. We'll get a contract, get this problem solved, move on. And a lot of what's going on now is a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense together, because we're having a bunch of stuff done that's being done independently. It's not being thought of as all of these things are actually the same problem. And we're parceling it out when really we should be putting it all together. And so I think the one thing I'll encourage, if I can, with the platform is we should try to draw more of this work internal. And just like our physical science grew so much when our labs grew, and there were these scientists who they didn't have to worry about just chasing down short-term funding after short-term funding opportunity. They had the time to actually think and develop. That's how our science progressed to be what it is today in a lot of very important ways. A lot of our technologies, a lot of our theories made their way with people who had the space to think and work together. And we need to create those spaces for the social science too. And it's a battle that we're just still kind of fighting. Things are getting a little better, but yeah, this part of our science is hard, and we need the right structures in place to tackle that challenge.
Do you think that, like the physical scientists, they challenge each other, they have different scientific opinions about things? How often do you see that in the social science realm? I mean, how much do you guys differ in how you think about things?
It's even worse. At least you guys all took some of the same foundational classes and have the same way of valuing. Oh yeah, we value observational data that comes from thermometers. Like, we don't even have that necessarily in common. in the social sciences. There are disciplines that fight tooth and nail amongst themselves with people who are quantitative, who want to do statistical analysis and do things like surveys and then, get the statistics out of that. And then there are people who abhor that and they want to be purely qualitative, and they feel like there's all these nuances and issues when you're trying to extract like reality from people's minds and get something truthful to their experience. The methodology really matters. You can walk up to the atmosphere and observe it. Well, some of the things we do actually do disturb the environment and interfere with it and interact with it, but not everything. But with a human, they know they're being observed unless they totally don't. And then you have to just infer that you're getting something correct from what you're seeing them do, because you're not asking them, you're just observing without any interaction. It's a mess. It is a real mess. So early on, when we were trying to bring social scientists into our discipline, there was almost no cohesion about what the right theories were to even be talking about people and how they perceive risk. How do we improve the communication system? I tried to handle that by taking classes in literally everything. And what I've come to understand is that I can at least talk to people who have different ideas that they want to bring to the table. So I try to be that person who can help people to see how they plug in together. I don't see any of the disciplines as having primacy. I think they all have something to say, but it's kind of like in our field, we have radar engineers, we have hydrologists, we have people who are synopticians, we have, Neil and whatever the heck it is that you can say that you do with the modeling world at this point, trying to improve NWP. There are an array of different specialties that have emerged as the science has come together. And I think that that's what's going to happen for the social sciences too. Right now, early on, everyone sort of fought for, no, my perspective is the right one. And what I'm trying to help us get to the point that we can do is actually just specialize. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer. I feel like, Jonathan, you said that you're like the king of getting us to random places, but I will definitely compete with you for the title of master of getting us to random places. I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
I really, really want to jump in here, and I dabble in some of this research too. Kim is like a rock star, and everybody that's listening needs to just know that. I mean, y'all know it anyway, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. Right, we're fighting an uphill battle in research because people, to get jobs and to get funding, have to have things that they can publish and take credit for. Right. And so the analogy that comes to my mind, if you grew up in Alabama in the country like I did, at some point you got a pie plate, an aluminum pie plate from your grandmother, and you got out in the backyard with your cousins and your friends and you made a mud pie. All right. And you're playing house and you're 4 or 5 years old and it's real, like that. You're proud of it and you want to go show it off and be like, hey, look, I made this pie. And you expect the adult to be impressed. Right. And research is mud pies. It's everybody saying, hey, look at my thing. And we all, just as the children, believe it's real, it has value and all the rest of it. But we can't forget that it's mud pies all around. And, we have to understand that there is no one right answer. And to the extent this knowledge that we're creating and the models and the frameworks have utility, it's limited to other people's ability to relate to them without knowing everything that's behind it, right? Like, I don't need to know what goes into the baked apple pie. I just want it warm and for it to taste a certain way. And that's the balance of trying to find really what works, in these systems and processes. And it's a blend, like Kim was saying, of different approaches to get there.
The thing is, disasters. Oh, sorry. I'll just sum it up by saying disasters are going to stretch everything. They stretch every system. I love how you talked about the ecosystem view, and it really is. Melissa, to your point earlier, we need to do exactly what you proposed. I think the way forward is recognizing that every voice in this matters. Everyone is part of that ecosystem. And there's just so much we could learn if we put our hands all together. And I love the idea of doing more hot washes. We don't have to rely just on these very heavy surface assessments, that Weather Service does. And they only do them after like the worst events that have very singular forecast attributes, right? They tend to be very singular events. We don't know, as a result of that, we don't know a whole lot about how our system functions in the ordinary events that comprise most of our circumstances. And that is kind of a big failure. That's a big deal. We should be building our communication infrastructure in such a way that it fits our day-to-day lives, not just the weird extreme outlier events. So I think one of the easiest ways to think about that is to have just smaller scale, periodic, reliable opportunities to all talk together, collect some kind of input, and analyze it. The social scientist in me knows that I say that it sounds so simple. The methodology challenge is real, but I have a lot of hope that this is the direction the Weather Service is going to start to take in short order, for reasons. I think there's social scientists on the inside who are in positions now to really advocate for that. And so look for that and keep voicing that. Melissa, Jonathan, Kevin, like the more that you can voice that as you're interested in it as a Weather Service partner, the more I think it will really push the mechanics internally to make that happen. Sorry, James, go ahead.
I was just going to go back to Kevin's point. Kevin, a few minutes ago, you talked about bringing in some TikTokers and YouTubers to IWT meetings. How serious are you about that?
Well, again, I don't want to rely on an outside organization to tell me who's legitimate and a legitimate source of news, because that's what's driving it is the viewers, the eyes on, the people who are, even if they're just entertained by this. I think it's worth a shot. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? They're certainly not going to do it. So what if we at least try to extend that, let's say over this coming summer or maybe next summer or something, we try to get a lot of the people in the same room or at least on a virtual call and make an attempt. Just say, hey, let's talk about some of the hyperbole that goes on. Let's talk about issues that you experience. The only it's a crazy, it's kind of a dumb analogy, but the only analogy I can really think of is like for years the United States as a country has legitimized different countries, and we've left other ones illegitimate. You're not a country, you're not a real thing. Meanwhile, they're out here and it's like their nuclear programs, they're working on it, and now you have to recognize that they have one, because guess what? Now they have all the power that you were hoping they were never going to get. It's the same thing sort of here. It's not quite like a nuclear weapon, but the same thing is like we can't just delegitimize these people because they are TikTokers or YouTubers, because they are driving an audience and they have a bigger audience than we certainly have. And even with all the power behind your social media accounts, James, they're outdoing you, frankly. And so they're on a national scale. The CWA boundaries don't matter. The DMA boundaries, they don't matter anymore. So we've got to embrace the fact that they are going to be some of the mouthpieces of the future. And I think it's time that we at least had a conversation and started one.
Yeah, and listen, I agree with you. And we have to understand that. Everybody thinks when there's a big hurricane coming, everybody watches the Weather Channel. Well, no, they don't. Did y'all see what just happened to the Weather Channel? It was gutted. They fired Mike Seidel. He's been there for how long? 25 years. That corporate entity, Allen Communication, that they're firing people all over the country. Now they're watching the YouTubers and the TikTokers. And I agree, we can't look at them as the enemy. And I will say, I'm a little frustrated because I've been torched this year. I have been torched. I will tell you, people are angry. I will tell you they're angry and they want to fight, and they're mad about business losses in terms of closing their business on, certain level risk days and schools closings and all these things, and nothing's happened. There's been a lot of busts here this year, and they're just angry. But we have to move past the anger and just try and, work with him. I agree. And of course, the question is, Kevin, who do you pick to come to an IWT meeting? Who do you let into the Slack chat session that's a YouTuber or a TikToker? And they're not all bad. Some of those people are good. Most of them had no formal weather training at all, but by golly, they're good at getting eyeballs on products, and they can help us. I mean, we're all here trying to mitigate loss of life. And I think in terms of looking at them as an enemy, we ought to try. But Neil, you're right. It ain't easy because their motivation in many cases is monetization. And that means scaring people and getting eyeballs on products. But
Yeah, but there might be a way to pull it off. Like I'll try anything unless there's an obvious huge downside, and I don't really see a major downside here, with the exception of just, maybe the optics of being attached to someone who's had a history, past, present, or potential future of bad behavior on the internet. But otherwise, I don't really see a big downside, but I still feel like we need to understand their game and their world and at least offer to play somewhat by their rules. Like why are they in this business? What's in it for them? Why would they even want to listen to us? Like they already feel like they have more credibility than us because in their world, the number of followers equals credibility. I mean, they could be the dumbest knucklehead on the planet. They have 50 million followers and everyone's going to act like they're smarter than, someone with a Nobel Prize in science. And, if you want to save the lives of those people who think that way, you're going to have to figure out how to live in their world.
And we have to be cognizant of the fact that we'll never have the Ron Burgundy newscast numbers like we had 10, 20, 30 years ago. Those days have ended, and people consume media in a different fashion. When people go home, they don't watch ABC at 9:30 or CBS at, 7. They're going to watch Netflix or Hulu or, Amazon Prime. And we have to be able to reach these people. And I agree. So,
well, let me ask you
Melissa,
this.
what are your thoughts?
Let me ask you another way. So if us here on this call, if we don't do it, who is going to do it? Give me the people who are going to do it. They're not going to reach out to us. So it's either us or it's nobody. So I don't see it like Neil saying. I don't think there's not a harm in at least trying. Look, they may blow us off. They may say, "Hey, you're too small to be in the same room with me." They may say whatever, but they also may say, "Hey, you're right. If our goal is to save lives and secondary goal is to make money, okay, fine. You got to keep the lights on. I get it. But if your primary goal is to do this because you have a heart of a servant, and the money's just secondary, then I think that's how you add legitimacy to this, right? Because we're all on the same team. I'm sorry.
And I do think every state has a Mr. Beast, and I bet you Neil has never watched Mr. Beast before. Neil, have you ever seen Mr. Beast?
Never heard of it.
He's I think he's got the most followers on YouTube. He has more people that watch. Mr. Beast has more viewers than any national network. Although there's some Twitch channels, I think, that have more than him that are the gamers. But, every state has a Mr. Beast, somebody that's done well on social and digital. And I agree. I think we should reach out. Melissa, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
I think to at least some of the more forefront individuals, it's going to mean a lot just to extend the olive branch because you're thinking of them. You're on their mind. Another thing we need to keep in mind is a lot of these streamers are employing students that are looking to go into the weather business. So and I know that for a fact because I work very closely with the Western Kentucky University program, and they have students who work with a prominent streamer in Eastern Kentucky who pays them money in scholarship funds to work for him. And these are individuals that are employing our future meteorologists, whether it be people on the broadcast sector, working in the government weather service, going into the private sector, or going into emergency management. They're employing these people. So if we can extend that olive branch and create a meaningful relationship with these individuals, we're also investing into the future as well.
And I'll just say, we did reach out to Ryan and put him on the show here. And I appreciate Ryan coming on the show. I don't know what he expected or what we expected, but I thought it worked out well. It was a good conversation. Of course, half the people said they'd never watch us again. Half the people said it was the greatest show you've ever done. It's very controversial, but at some point and I just think part of the problem is this feeling thing. We're all concerned about our feelings, and who gives a red rip about what I feel or what anybody here feels. It's about, keeping somebody alive, Kevin, when there's a, tornado approaching. And they're not going to be watching the traditional stuff. Like I'm watching these Oklahoma TV stations, wondering, I wonder how many people are watching the local Oklahoma stations, and I wonder how many people are watching the YouTubers and the TikTokers right now. And I'm mainly YouTubers in a thing like this. I would, and again, so much of this is a Kim question, but I would love to know that. And we don't get those metrics in our world. We get the metrics for the old traditional broadcast, but that doesn't help me. I want to know right now how many people are watching the Oklahoma City TV stations, the traditional television, and then how many are watching the streamers. And I'd love to know. So Bruce Jones, are you here? Let me who's on the call here. Bruce, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah, James.
Okay, awesome. So what are your thoughts on the ongoing event out there real quick?
Kansas and Oklahoma?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just texting my daughter. She's at K-State in Manhattan. She's in a sorority. They had to take shelter a little while ago as they had a tornado warning go in Manhattan. Actually, I guess the circulation went right over the campus, so everything's good up there now. But unfortunately, the folks out near Chapman, Kansas, had another tornado just come. It's that one on the left side there, that tornado warning with the big hook on it. That's down near Chapman. Chapman, Kansas is a town that's already been hit by a couple of tornadoes in the last 10 years. They don't need another one. Thank God.
That looks
may have
nasty.
gone west of. Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm hoping that one treks north of Manhattan, but I think everybody at the K-State campus was well aware of what was going on. It sounds like they were. So yeah, it's
and Bruce, where are you? Where are you tonight?
I'm actually out in Palm Springs, California for the California Emergency Management Conference out here.
Okay, you're not out there with Bill Murray at the pub crawl, are you?
Invite him by. I'll buy him a couple of rounds.
No, Bill is in Beverly Hills of all places.
Oh, is he?
But anyway, Bruce, if you need to hop in, just hop in, and we got to take a break here in just a second. But Jen, you've been kind of quiet. Jen, are you still on the call here? What are your thoughts on bringing in some of the YouTubers and talking?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to go away. So and I don't think they need to. I mean, if I have my concerns about some of it, and as I mentioned earlier, I do like the more localized, like the Tennessee Valley weather folks, because they work with a smaller. I just think you kind of get lost when you're doing the whole national thing all the time, and it's all hype all the time. I'd rather have it more localized, but that's just my opinion. But I think we're going to be going into this digital era. Let's get people on and have us all work together so we don't have this battle of, you said, something about me, and it's just this rabid fandom thing that goes on, and then nobody wants to talk to each other, and then they're all mad at each other. It's so silly. We're all supposed to be helping each other. We're supposed to be helping to save lives. So let's try to get the communications going for everybody.
All right, I agree with that, and but I'm just telling you, we're just in a very angry time in society right now, and it makes it harder. But we'll give it a shot. Kevin, you back with us? I thought Kevin got mad and hung up on us.
I did. Yeah,
I knew it.
Our NWS reliable internet here.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break, and we're going to go to Tony Rice, and we're going to come back. We'll talk with Bruce. And we'll kind of do a little more on this, and we'll go to picks of the week. But let's take a quick break, and we're going to hear from Tony Rice in the Astronomy Report as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
This week, early risers can look for something that maybe you've never seen before, the planet Mercury. This first rock from the sun is pretty challenging to see. It's not much larger than the moon, but it's a lot farther away. The main reason we don't see a whole lot of it is that it's so close to the sun, so it's normally lost in the sun's glare. But a few times a year, Mercury reaches greatest elongation, or separation from the sun in our sky, and that gives us our best shot at seeing it. It's brightest and highest above the horizon. Now, it's still pretty small and relatively dim, especially compared to something like Venus, but it is visible to the unaided eye if you know where to look. So, this week, Mercury is going to be a little further from the sun each morning in the pre-dawn sky until it reaches greatest elongation west late next week. To find it, look due east about an hour before sunrise, and then look about 5 degrees above the horizon. That's about the width of 3 fingers on your outstretched hand. Now, Mercury doesn't have far to go around the sun. It completes an orbit about every 88 days. Those are Earth days, I should say. A day on Mercury lasts 59 Earth days, but that's for another time. If you prefer to do your stargazing, or in this case, a planet that can be easily mistaken for a star, in the evening, you'll have your chance with Mercury in late July. These points of greatest elongation, they come up about every 10 weeks, first maximizing western elongation, which makes it appear as a morning star, and then 2.5 months later, maximizing eastern elongation, making it appear as an evening star. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Bruce Jones, I was looking in the chat. Interesting to see what Neil said. He said National Weather Service radio was the only signal, Neil, you could pick up in the Everglades backcountry. Is that that
was it?
That's good.
That was it. I had for all you ham radio operators out there, I had my Bufwang UV5R, highly controversial radio I bought off Amazon. But I was able to pick up the no weather radio, which was instrumental in some of my decisions of not killing myself in my boat in 30-knot easterly winds that were pretty nonstop last week down in South Florida.
That's a good plug right there, Bruce.
Do you like that radio, Neil?
I do. I do. And I gotta admit, I'm actually going through the process of getting my ham operator's license just so I don't get myself in trouble getting on the wrong frequencies and making people angry.
Yeah. I encourage more people to do that. It's a bit of a schlep to try to get through it, but there's some nice little some books. James, you remember that book, Now You're Talking? That was just kind of like, they still publish that book. Now You're Talking is a book that really kind of guides you through a real quick study on how to pass the FCC ham radio license test.
And you don't even have to know the Morse code anymore.
Yeah. So it's gotten a little bit easier, but I'm glad you're doing that. I wish more of our storm chasers were ham radio operators. I really do. I wish that every chaser out there had a ham unit in their vehicle. I mentioned Chapman, Kansas. That's Dickinson County. They had a tornado warning in Dickinson County a couple of years ago, and I talked to the emergency manager. He had 200 vehicles in his county during a tornado warning. The tornado had struck a barn, so there was damage, and he and his deputy trying to get down the road. They can't even move because there's so many cars. I said, Chancey, how many of those people reported to Topeka National Weather Service? Did you ever call them? He said, yeah, I did call them, as a matter of fact. They said they got zero reports from about 200 vehicles that were in Dickinson County during a tornado on the ground. And so, I don't want to preach to people, to the chasers and so forth. I understand what you're doing, but boy, it would really be nice if more of you were ham radio operators, because you can key that mic and hundreds or even thousands of people can hear what you're saying at once. And especially National Weather Service Topeka could hear it loud and clear if you were ham radio operator.
Yeah, I'm telling you, having a ham license is never a bad thing. This is how long I've had mine. I got mine in 1970. How about that? I was 14 years old. But goodness, it is still important to this day, despite cell phones, despite the technology. It's still important because one day it will become very important. But Bruce, getting a weather radio is important. I was in 2 schools today, and I always show a picture of a weather radio in the schools, and I'll say, how many of you have one of these things in your house? And I'd say for both schools, it was about 50%, about half. That's not good enough. And I always tell them, listen, you go back and you tell your parents to get one of these things and be really whiny when you do that, okay? Tell them it's important. You need one. And it's important for everybody. And you look at a night like tonight, how many warnings have been posted? And goodness, if you got a weather radio, you'll get the warning.
I forgot to mention, James, that tornado outbreak up in Nebraska, up around Lincoln and Omaha. There was a 14 county consortium in southeast Nebraska, including the Omaha and Lincoln areas. 14 counties pooled money together, and they bought a couple of thousand weather radios that we programmed and sent up there about, I don't know, 2 months ago. And I'm sure every single one of those weather radios went off and gave a good warning to those folks. So these things really work. They're America's official federal warning system. And like James, I've always just scratched my head trying to figure out, why do we not have them in 100% of American homes? Because I personally think they belong there, and I've said that for a long, long time. So we've got Mother's Day coming up, and what better gift to give mom than a NOAA weather radio? It's a gift that could actually save her. And if you're a meteorologist or a weather junkie, I can tell you, if you give your mom a NOAA weather radio, then she's not going to expect you to call her all the time whenever there's severe weather in her neighborhood, because the radio will tell her faster than you can by calling her on her cricket phone. So there's a special offer for you if you'll go to midlandusa.com. That's our website for Midland Weather Radios. And there's a special offer here for WeatherBrains listeners and viewers. It's a 25% offer. You use the promo code SPAN25. That's SPANN25. And when you use that promo code at midlandusa.com, you'll get 25% off all the weather products. And that includes the emergency crank radios, which are good for the upcoming hurricane season and good for being when you're out in the Everglades, and the desktop radios as well, which are public alert certified weather radios. Public alert certification means it has battery backup. It has a minimum 77 decibel alert siren. It has a port on the back where you can plug in a strobe light and pillow shaker for the deaf and hard of hearing. And the list goes on and on and on. For a public alert certified weather radio, you'll get 25% off when you use the promo code SPAN25, SPANN25. The public alert certified weather radios have the specific area message encoding, so you can tell it, I live in this county and I only want alerts for the county that I live in. And that's the way that SAME works. And I've got a weather pick for this week that has something to do with SAME. I'll save that for you, James.
Ooh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, and again, this is a good chance. If you're listening to this show, you're a weather dweeb, geek, nerd, dork, or weenie. And you probably have one, but you can help us by telling your friends and your neighbors and your relatives that they need one, and take advantage of the promo code. Again, it's SPANN25, midlandusa.com. All right. So Kevin Laws and Kim, see, Kim, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's get a quick update on the weather situation. Kim, it looks like there are actually no tornado. Well, I take it back. Well, no, I see no tornado warnings in Oklahoma. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. And you should talk to Kevin. He's actually giving me a really great, very personalized mesoscale discussion on the evolution of the storms right now. Go for it, Kev.
Yeah, we talk about two things. The storm mode is turned linear, which means the flow is turned parallel to the dry line, which that was in the models too. And you still see some supercells out ahead where the flow is not quite parallel, but for the most part, it's turned into a linear storm mode. And then secondly, one thing we saw on the special sounding from Norman earlier was they had a little bit of backing aloft in the updraft space. And when you have that, and this is where I think the real next step of meteorology is. We get out of the parameter space and more into realistic observations. And sometimes we forget to do that because we're so tied into the CAM models, Neil Jacobs. And when we do that, we kind of lose sight of what is actually happening out the window. And we saw a little bit of backing aloft in the updraft space. And when you have that, it just, man, it really interferes with what, turns high risk into more of a slider enhanced risk, thank goodness, because the parameter space earlier on, especially from some of the cams, was just as dangerous as it can get from a meteorology perspective. But the reality of it, we started seeing these little intricacies that popped up. And so which is a good thing, right? I mean, it's a great thing. If you want to have a forecast bust, you want to have it on the high risk days. So.
Neil, grade the cams, Neil, on this one.
A objective verification is tricky with those, believe it or not, because if you say that the storm cell was in this location and the reality was it was one grid point over, you get dinged twice. You'd have been better off just not predicting the storm at all.
That's right.
Whereas a lower resolution model, you kind of just, it's all fuzzy and it's, well, yeah, you kind of get it right. A lot of people have actually upped their verification scores with high-res cam models by regridding them to lower resolution before they do the verification, and their skill score goes up. So it's really the utility is in how the forecaster interprets it, not actually saying, looking at where all the individual cells are, but kind of getting an idea where the dry line is, where the storm motion's headed. It's useful if you know how to use it. It's a disaster if you don't know what you're looking at.
What would be a great show? Have Neil do his presentation about the gaming theory and all this, and watch Kim pull her hair out. Her hair will look like mine by the time we're done. And because he makes a good point, and he talks about how the world we live in, we're getting further and further away from more in situ observations, let's say, and the further you get away from that, the worse these AI outcomes and the worst outcomes you're going to have from things that are computer generated, because it still is heavily based in our in situ world, and we seem to be going further. I mean, this is where I get in trouble, and I will just go ahead and say it. But as the budgets get worse and worse, the things that start to dry up are the in situ observations, the satellites, the aqua satellites, terra satellites, the upper air soundings are going away in a lot of places, and in favor of probably less reliable observations that we've had for 100 years. And the downside of doing that is that, the old garbage in, garbage out. I mean, it still holds to this day. And 2024 is the same as 1984. And so, but he would give a great insight. Let him give his presentation one of these show weeks, and that would be a great discussion for you guys.
All right. So, Jonathan Gaddy, what's the one thing you want people in the professional weather enterprise to know about emergency management?
You got to talk to them. I think that's the main thing is to the extent folks that are working in weather, whether it's, on the private sector side or in government, just get in the car and go hang out with some emergency managers. If you've been to one emergency management office, you've been to one emergency management office. It's like James and the barbecue joints. They're all completely unique, and you've got to build those relationships, and they're never going to be the same twice. I think, I just can't emphasize that point enough. It's like what Kevin was saying, those personal relationships are key. And I think some of the conversation y'all had tonight around, just having a really low pressure, low intensity kind of 360 hot wash, or, post event, post game, the Monday night. We don't do enough of that in this business. And it needs to be like safe for people to participate, where nobody thinks they're going to walk in and get beat up, and we can just, walk around the room and say, hey, how did we do? How can we improve? And we need to pull the media partners into that too.
Melissa, what do you say?
Emergency managers wear a lot of hats. We're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And one thing, lastly, your local emergency manager is not FEMA. That is like the biggest thing, the biggest misconception that a lot of the locals think. They think that we're FEMA, and we're not. We're the stepping stone to that, but we have to go through the stadium first, and then we go to FEMA after that. There's a lot of steps that we have to take to be able to get assistance from the federal level, and your emergency managers will work night and day, 24/7, 365 to get you the things that you need. They will sacrifice sleep. They will do whatever they can to ensure that they're providing for their citizens.
And I think it's important to point out that I don't think people understand that for some rural counties, you might not have a single full-time emergency management agency employee, right?
That's correct. Some emergency manager may be the 911, the PSAP operator. They may be the director of sanitation and trash for their county. They may be the fire chief and the emergency manager. We're like what Jonathan said. No, each emergency management office is not the same. Jefferson County is vastly different than Calhoun County, which is vastly different than Shelby County. And it also varies from state to state. EM offices are that some states don't mandate that they have full-time EM emergency managers in their counties. It may be in, they may not even be paid. And that's what people don't realize is they have these, a lot of the times they have these individuals volunteering their time to provide services for their counties on top of working a full-time job to be able to put food on the table for their family. So we're a very growing field, very much still in its infancy, but we're not all cut from the same cloth. We all come from different walks of life, and we all come from different backgrounds. So it's important if you don't know who your emergency managers are in your county and you want to go see them, you want to meet them, you want to tour their facility. If you call them, I guarantee you they're going to say, "Hey, let's set up a meeting. I'd love to meet you." You know, we're hospitable, and we would just love to be able to better connect with our communities.
Is there a mutual aid agreement like some fire departments have for adjacent counties with EMs, out of curiosity?
Yes and no. So in some parts of their state, we have regional mutual aid agreements. Northern Alabama and Southern Alabama have their own mutual aid agreement among emergency management offices, but we're also able to do mutual aid county to county, and we can request that through the state through our regional coordinators. So it's definitely there and definitely available, but in some areas you have to cut through some tape to be able to get the ball rolling on that.
So, Kevin Laws, it's March the 6th, 2024. If you could wave a magic wand, what's the one thing you would fix now to make the warning process better?
One thing.
One thing. What's the one? We'll take you take three. Take the top three. How about that?
I'll give you one good one. We've got to be able to talk to each other. We cannot talk to each other, and that's interagency, intra-agency. For whatever reason, every WFO lives on its own little island out here, and we can't talk about things that are going on in other offices without there being some kind of weird ownership about the warning process, the forecast process, and you know, people take it really personal. We've got to get over that. We've got to do the ego check at the door if we can, because it will only make us better if we can somehow break through that little ceiling that we seem to be anchored to so bad. The Southern region, you know, I've kind of cut my teeth all the way through Southern region. The Southern region was horrible about being on its own little islands, and I think we've come a long way in bridging some of that back, and we're able to talk as groups now, but there's still a lot of things that need to be checked and triple checked, and it's a science. We're going to make mistakes, and I think we just need to get over it and not take it personal, and it'll just make us so much better if we can do that. I've got to work on that myself.
Yeah, and I'll just say one thing for us is in my business where we're, you know, using data from different weather service offices, the culture is different from office to office. And sometimes the culture, it's as different as daylight and darkness. And when storms move out of one CWA into another one, everything changes, and it makes it hard on us. And I agree. I think if there's a way, and again, everybody's going to be different. I understand that. But if there's just a way to somehow coordinate better in a handoff from one CWA to the next, I think that would be helpful as well. So, Kim, one question for you, and I know we have to do picks of the week and get out of here because you've got storms. What's the highest acceptable false alarm ratio for a specific weather service office for tornado warnings?
Well, sure, yeah. Give me the easy one. Jeez.
That's what I do because you're the smartest one on the show here.
Well, that's not true for sure. I was just talking. I was talking back and forth with Kevin, and just very honestly, I just so appreciate all of you. And I was telling him I appreciate him. I am humbled by how much you guys teach me all the time. So anyway, I think the very unsatisfying answer I'm going to give you to your question is that we have absolutely no idea. And we have to get over thinking that there's just one single way to make this trade-off perfect. One of the things that is really a challenge in just doing the research on false alarms is we don't know what people think a false alarm is. When do you think that you have been alerted in a way that you find acceptable, and when not? We have a very technical definition of what it is to be included in a warning boundary, but some of the research that's gone on has shown that people have absolutely no idea what those boundaries are, and they feel warned even if they're not in them very often because they're doing things like watching wide area network television, or hearing things on the radio where they're taking a warning that happens just in their region is being warned. Like phenomenologically, we do not have a really good handle on what is it that people think it is to be warned, and then what is it that people think it means to have been warned falsely. And outside of that, even if we knew those things, we also then need to assess the trade-off. Would they prefer to not get warned and to, have a tornado come within whatever distance of them? It's not just the one side of the proposition. It's not just, bring that one number down. Kevin has lived this. It's been most of the science you guys have been looking at in your region for tornado warning improvement. How do you try to get the false alarm ratio down while preserving probability of detection? In some places, there's a straight science barrier that you hit where those things are just straight trade-offs. So I know you guys have done some work to mitigate against that somewhat in increasing lead times. You can negotiate among these different things, but yeah, I'll just say we have no real idea in the social sciences, and there's a lot of conflict in the literature, and a lot of that has to do with us not having a really good sense of what a false alarm actually is and how to measure it.
Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I negotiated it this way. I just said I'm gonna put the definition of it aside for just a minute because I just thought we could do better. I mean, as I thought the science was in a place where we could actually do better if we would apply it correctly and do things the right way. But offices ask me all the time, how do we do it? And it's simple. You make it a priority. There's so many things pulling at you from every direction. If you sit down and you say, okay, we're going to make it a priority. It's our number one priority. And it's easier for us a little bit because we don't deal with winter weather and a lot of hurricanes and other things that fire weather, other things that offices have as a priority. But here locally, we just said, okay, enough's enough. We're going to do this. We're not going to take no for an answer. I don't care what the previous research has said about false alarms versus POD versus lead time. We're going to set out to prove it wrong. And look, if we fail, we fail. We couldn't do any worse than what we were doing. We were below the national average for decades, right? So we couldn't do any worse. So, hey, and sometimes we hear that about it. Lord knows, if we miss a tornado, how conservative you guys, we were missing them before. Nothing changed. So don't give me this about how you can't do it, because you can. You just have to make a priority. You have to have the will to do it, and you have to have patience and understanding about what's going on. But from a science perspective, it can be done. We've proven it. And we don't subscribe to a lot of case scenarios and training, and we don't subscribe to any of that because we just have so much weather here. It's easy for us to practice in real time almost, and so it's a blessing to be able to have that and have a crew that subscribes to it and believes in the philosophy, because everything's easy after you have that part. The culture is the hard part to change, not the warning part.
But what they've done, I can't tell you how easy it's made it on us in this market, where we're not going on covering up a football game for, something that's not there. And it's just marvelous what Kevin and his team have done here. So big hats off and an attaboy, and I could go on and on here. But having said that, we have to do picks of the week. So for everybody on the show, you have to come up with a pick of the week. This could be something, should be something weather-related, website, hardware, anything remotely related to weather. So Jen, You made it through the whole show.
I did.
Give us a good pick.
So our friend Johnny Parker, who was on just a couple of weeks ago, on April 27th, he had a ceremony in Smithville and they named a street after him. And so my pick of the week is a Facebook post that shows his smiling face. He's so excited. Tornado Talk was represented there by Zach. He went down there to celebrate with Johnny, and it was just amazing. So it's Johnny Parker Street. Has a little sun and a cloud on the street sign, and it was really special to see, and he was just so excited. So I'm really proud of that kid.
That is outstanding, and it was great. He was on the show last week, right? Or week before.
Yeah.
He was on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So good to have Johnny, and that is a great story. All right, Kim, I know you're getting set for storm, so what's a good pick of the week?
Yeah, I'm going to share a little bit of information about something that the Storm Prediction Center is exploring as a potential complement to or replacement of the convective outlook. And it actually can handle cases like today, hopefully a little bit more effectively than the current system does. They're looking especially at what they're calling conditional intensity forecasts. So it's one of those, if storms fire, if you get a storm, here's how bad it could be. So essentially taking the two pieces of what comprises the convective outlook, the coverage and the intensity, and breaking them apart a little bit to more clearly tell the story.
Awesome. And I thought Rick did a really good job of messaging today. I don't know if you saw his, and I say Rick, somebody at Norman, but I thought their little discussion was really good this morning. That was a very well-written piece that anybody could understand, communicated the conditional situation very clearly. And I love what they did in Norman today, this morning, prepping everybody. So, all right, Neil, give us a pick of the week. Go.
Before I dive into the pick of the week, I wanted to sort of piggyback, James, off what you were talking about with what Kevin and everyone there in Birmingham's done. I hadn't seen this talk before, but Kevin claims he's been giving it for years. What they've done with the POD and the FAR to me is just amazing. And that was the first time I'd ever seen it when we were down at CCAPS. And I really hope that the rest of the Weather Service is paying attention on how you guys do stuff down there, because that was pretty impressive. My pick of the week is the Hurricane Awareness Tour. It's going on right now. They were in Portland, Maine today. Believe it or not, Portland, you're not in the clear just because you're out of the way. Albany, New York tomorrow. Norfolk, Virginia on the 8th. Charleston, South Carolina on the 9th. And unfortunately, I'm leaving Charleston tomorrow, so I'm going to miss them. And then Sanford, Florida on May 10th. So if you're in one of those towns, go check them out. You get to see the P-3, the C-130 from the Air Force, and learn a lot about how to be prepared for the hurricane season.
Excellent. We'll put the link up on weatherbrains.com. And speaking of that, we're less than a month away from the official beginning of the Atlantic hurricane season. Tomer Berg has this really good site where he puts together tropical data, and it was extremely useful last year. And if you were not using it, I'll put the link up on weatherbrains.com, and it's just a good resource. A lot of good data, model data, everything you'd want to see in one place, a one-stop shop there, if you will. So that'll be my pick of the week. All right, so let's go now to Jonathan. Jonathan, give us a pick that's good. Go.
We've had a lot of conversation around the need for relationships and stuff. One of the things that really has come to my mind, and I've talked to some of the leadership at FEMA and the Weather Service about, and Kim and I have talked about that. There's no training class that exists right now where we can put Weather Service, media, and emergency managers in the same space together. And that's something that we really need. But there is a resource that will allow us to do something similar, and that's called the Integrated Emergency Management course. That the FEMA's Emergency Management Institute up in Emmitsburg, Maryland offers. We did that when I was in Calhoun County. We took about 75 folks up there for 4 days and had some folks from the Weather Service attend as well. So for listeners, if you want to partner up with your emergency managers and the media, this is something that you can work with them and get on the schedule. They'll come into a community, build scenarios. It's a great learning opportunity. I think that's something that we really need to work on.
No kidding. Great pick. All right, Melissa, your turn. Go.
My pick of the week, it's pretty much for everyone that listens, a lot of local emergency management agencies put on this training called CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams. And if there are individuals that are interested in emergency management or are just interested in helping their community becoming more prepared, I highly encourage everybody to reach out to their local EM to see if they offer this training and then sign up for it. It's a great training. It's several weeks long that culminates into an exercise at the end where you learn how to do very, very basic hands-on first response training. So let's say a tornado hit your neighborhood, you are the first responder. You can help your neighbors. You understand basic triage. You learn how to use a fire extinguisher, how to turn, the gas utilities off. Just some basic preparedness and response skills that every individual should know to really build a more resilient community within where they live, and also build a more resilient whole community as well.
And it's a win-win for everybody. Excellent. Kevin Laws, give us a good pick.
Yep, we've gotten over the spring break hump, and a weather phenomenon that gets overlooked quite often is rip currents, and they are a major factor, especially on the Gulf Coast. And I can't thank the Tallahassee and Mobile office. They partnered up down along the coast, and they've offered a great resource, which I'll link to you guys here, that promotes rip current awareness, but more importantly has the rip current forecast for every known destination across the Gulf Coast. And it impacts everybody. A good friend of the show and a good friend of ours, Bill LaPinta, was actually killed in a rip current in North Carolina a couple of years ago. And that's just, if it can happen to him, it can certainly happen to anyone, because nobody knew more about those kind of phenomena than he did. And so as tragic as that was, the awareness and the promotions that they have offered down there, and it's just been tremendous. And I can't thank them enough for doing that. So rip current awareness, important this summer. And most people that die are not from the beach areas or even from those states. They come from up north or snowbirds or whatever, and they don't understand it. And I noticed I think on your social media page, you promote what flag it is every single day at Orange Beach, and that's just important. So that's it.
It is very important. All right. So Jonathan or Melissa, anything we need to promote? Any social media accounts, any websites, anything?
If anyone wants to follow our agency stuff, we're EMA Jeffco, EMAJEFFCOAL on all social media platforms. Our website is jeffcoema.org. And then if anybody is curious and wants to follow me, they can follow me as Southern Mel on Twitter, Instagram. I'm active on most social media platforms.
Jonathan, anything from your end?
I try to stay off the radar, no pun
like Neil.
That's right.
It's probably good for your mental health. All right, let's see. Bruce Jones, you still there? Goodness, Bruce, you still with us? I'm so sorry. I should have brought you in first. Go. Give us that pick. You talked about your pick. Go.
Yeah. So I just went to Kinko's and printed off this map. I'm holding up a map of Sonoma County with all these beautiful colors on it. Sonoma County, California, which is up near Napa, which is on the north end of San Francisco Bay. They had the Tubbs fire years ago that burned into Santa Rosa and caused quite a few deaths there. So they're very wildfire oriented now. They're using NOAA weather radio, and they have partitioned Sonoma County into smaller portions so that they can use the new partial county alerting on NOAA weather radio.
Yeah. Yes.
It's exciting. This was a project between Sonoma County Emergency Management and Brian Garcia, the WCM at National Weather Service San Francisco, and Western Region headquarters and National Weather Service headquarters in DC. And they're now rolling out partial county alerting, which will allow big, bothersome, troublesome counties to be partitioned into smaller segments so that the warnings can be more finely focused for the northwest corner, the north central corner, et cetera.
Bruce, when do you think we'll see something like that for tornadoes down the line?
Oh, yeah. You can put out any warning you want to. I think that we already have Pennington County, South Dakota, which is partly in the Black Hills, partly in Rapid City, and partly out on the Badlands Prairie, is partitioned into 3 segments. So they can do tornado warning for out on the prairie, and not have to bother the people in Rapid City with a tornado warning that's actually out in the Badlands.
That is too cool. And again, I think that's a sign that weather radio is here to stay. And I'm so excited that the commitment is there and it's so critical. So great pick. All right. So we need to roll out of here. To all of our guests, thank you for being on the show tonight. And Kim, thank you for coming on, despite the fact that you've got severe storms knocking on the door. She's a real trooper. If you're new here, we're typically on the air Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. Live.bigbrainsmedia.com. Just go to the YouTube channel. That's the best way to do it. YouTube.com/weatherbrains to watch us live. But most people listen to the audio version. However you consume the show, we are thankful you do that. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address is email@weatherbrains.com. Jen will do an email segment next week. But we got to wrap this one up. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Thanks, everybody. This was a good one.
Great talk.